because we love our country. We love our country. And when you love something, you fight for it.
Imagine a moment when the future of American roads is split down two wildly different paths. The 2024 election is fast approaching, and with it comes a choice that could reshape the entire auto industry in ways we can hardly imagine. This isn't just about choosing a leader, it's about deciding the direction of cars, the environment, and the economy for years to come. On one side, Donald Trump. His vision is a powerful rollback to gas-powered traditions, where the engine roar of gasoline is celebrated and federal regulations are slashed to boost production. But his trade tactics and tariffs could bring unexpected price surges, leaving American car buyers feeling the pinch. And on the other side, Kamala Harris. Her focus is on a green transformation, a commitment to making electric vehicles the norm, and a plan to tighten emission standards that could make gas engines an endangered species. If Harris wins, we could see sweeping mandates that accelerate the EV shift, transforming roads and leaving the industry scrambling to keep up. So what would each path mean for the industry and for drivers? Buckle up as we dig into each candidate's vision, from emission rollbacks to electric vehicle revolutions. And let's start with Donald Trump's vision for the American auto industry, a bold return to gasoline-powered glory. Deregulation and the revival of gas-powered giants. Trump's stance on the auto industry is crystal clear: unleash the power of traditional manufacturing by cutting down regulations. Under his vision, those stringent emission standards that have put the brakes on gas-powered vehicles would be slashed, giving automakers the freedom to produce the cars that defined American roads for generations. Imagine a resurgence of muscle cars and pickup trucks, with manufacturers no longer bound by rules forcing them to go green. Trump believes that regulations on emissions are nothing more than bureaucratic red tape that's weighed down the industry. His stance? Tear it down. During his previous term, he worked to undo many of the Obama-era fuel efficiency standards, making it clear that he saw these standards as an obstacle to economic growth. If he returns to office, the message is clear. Emission standards will drop, allowing automakers to ramp up the production of gas-powered vehicles without the pressure to meet environmental mandates. The impact? With looser regulations, manufacturing costs could decrease, possibly making gas-powered cars cheaper to produce. But cheaper production doesn't always mean lower prices. The question is, will consumers actually see these savings, or will they find themselves paying a hidden price in other areas? That's what we'll explore next. The tariff dilemma: protecting jobs or raising prices. If there's one thing Trump is known for, it's his aggressive trade policies aimed at bringing manufacturing jobs back to American soil. But with this approach comes a major sticking point: tariffs. In the past, Trump imposed tariffs on goods from countries like China and Mexico, and he's hinted at going even further if he wins in 2024. In fact, he's proposed tariffs on all imported goods, which would include a significant portion of car parts. For automakers, this would mean higher costs for parts sourced from outside the US, and here's the ripple effect: those costs would almost certainly be passed on to the consumer. Imagine going into a dealership and finding that the car you had your eye on is now thousands of dollars more expensive, all because of these added tariffs. That's the reality many experts warn could come to pass if Trump's trade policies take full effect. The promise Trump makes to voters is that these tariffs would encourage companies to manufacture more in the US, thereby creating jobs. But the flip side? Higher car prices and a potential slowdown in car sales as consumers reconsider their budgets. It's a classic case of protectionism versus cost to consumers. And for car buyers, the stakes are real: a slowdown for electric vehicles. When it comes to electric vehicles, Trump has been outspoken. Unlike Harris, who is championing an electric revolution, Trump has voiced his skepticism about the government's push for EVs, arguing that the market, not federal mandates, should dictate the future of automotive technology. If he returns to office, there's a strong chance that the federal incentives currently supporting EV purchases would be rolled back or eliminated entirely. Consider the implications. Right now, federal incentives can cut the cost of an electric car by thousands of dollars, making them more affordable for the average consumer. If those incentives disappear, suddenly the price of EVs skyrockets, pushing many potential buyers out of the market. And without a federal push, the growth of charging infrastructure, a crucial component for widespread EV adoption, adoption could also slow down, making electric cars a less practical option for many Americans. This policy stance could create a significant gap in the market, while states like California may still push forward with their own incentives and regulations to encourage EV adoption. Other states may lag behind, creating a divided landscape where EV access and affordability vary drastically depending on where you live. To the big question, could this stall America's transition to electric vehicles while other countries charge ahead? And if so, where would that leave the US on the global stage of automotive innovation? The Green Revolution. Harris's all-in bet on electric vehicles. Now let's take a look at Kamala Harris's agenda for the auto industry. If elected, Harris has a bold vision, one that might completely redefine what American roads look like and how cars are made. At the heart of her plan is a massive push for electric vehicles, one she believes will not only help the environment, but transform America's industrial landscape. This isn't just a slow shift, it's a full-speed sprint toward a future where gas stations could be swapped for charging stations and electric cars become the new standard. Harris's plan includes significant investments in EV infrastructure, such as a nationwide network of charging stations. But her approach goes beyond mere infrastructure. She's proposed increased federal incentives for EV buyers, which means more Americans could be encouraged to make the switch from gasoline to electric. Right now, these incentives can make a big difference in the price of EVs, and with Harris in office, that support could expand even further, making EVs not just accessible, but affordable for more people. The shock factor, Harris is aiming for nothing less than a green revolution, where gasoline-powered cars could become relics of the past. Imagine a future where EVs aren't just one option on the lot, but the only option available. Harris's all-in commitment is poised to put EVs in the driver's seat, literally. Stricter emission standards. The end of the gas era. If Harris's vision comes to life, it won't just be about offering incentives for EVs, it will be about setting strict emission standards that could essentially force automakers to rethink their entire lineups. Building on the Biden administration's ambitious environmental policies, Harris is likely to push for even stricter emission standards for new vehicles. Her approach, if a car doesn't meet stringent new efficiency levels, it might not make it to the market. Imagine what this means for traditional gas-powered cars. Under Harris, we could be looking at policies that make it economically unviable for automakers to produce anything but electric or hybrid models. This kind of legislation would essentially push traditional gas-powered vehicles out of the American market, a reality that could take hold within a few years. The impact? Stricter emission standards could mark the beginning of the end for traditional engines. Car makers would have no choice but to ramp up EV production, leaving the gas-powered car as a fading memory. For drivers and car buyers, this shift could be both exciting and intimidating, a future where the choice to go electric may not be a choice at all, supporting American jobs and manufacturing in a green economy. Harris isn't just aiming for a greener auto industry, she's also focused on making sure American workers benefit from this transformation. Aware of the job market shifts that come with moving to green energy, Harris plans to support workers by creating opportunities within the EV and green tech sectors. Her policies include incentives for companies that bring EV manufacturing jobs to the US, as well as federal funding for retraining programs to prepare workers for a more electrified industry. So what does this mean for traditional auto manufacturing jobs? Well, it could mean a significant reshuffling. As EV production scales up, there's a chance that some traditional roles in engine and transmission manufacturing could phase out. But Harris believes that by supporting green energy and EV-focused roles, the overall job market in the automotive sector can grow, potentially creating thousands of new positions in battery production, EV assembly, and software development for these advanced vehicles. The shock here? A Harris administration would mean that the American auto workforce might look entirely different in a few years. Traditional auto workers could find themselves transitioning into roles in an industry that looks and feels drastically different from the one they know. It's a bold bet on the future of work, one that could see the country's manufacturing workforce pivot from pistons and engines to batteries and software. Consumer choices and the price of change. Let's bring it down to the everyday driver, the person thinking about their next car purchase. What will the choice between Trump and Harris mean for them? Under Trump, with his focus on traditional manufacturing, consumers might see a wider selection of gas-powered cars at potentially lower prices. By cutting down on regulatory costs and allowing car makers to stick with existing technologies, Trump's policies could translate into more affordable options for those who prefer the familiarity of gas engines. But here's the flip side. Trump's tariffs could hit car prices hard. If a significant portion of auto parts continues to come from countries like China and Mexico, increased tariffs could drive up production costs. The end result, consumers might be paying more at the dealership. Imagine a world where a car's price is significantly inflated because of new tariffs, making consumers question whether traditional cars are as affordable as they used to be. Now, compare that with Harris's vision. Her policies are likely to make electric vehicles more accessible, but they may come at a higher initial cost. Electric vehicles and the infrastructure around them are still in development, and while government incentives may bring down prices, the transition to electric could still be a financial challenge for some. However, Harris's approach promises long-term savings on fuel and maintenance, appealing to eco-conscious buyers looking for a vehicle that saves money over time. The bottom line, each path has trade-offs. Trump's approach could offer short-term savings on traditional cars, but hit consumers with hidden costs from tariffs, while Harris's focus on EVs could mean higher upfront prices but lower operating costs down the road. The innovation gap, will America lead or fall behind? Beyond the consumer's perspective, there's a larger question looming: America's place in the global auto industry. With countries around the world racing toward EV dominance, this election's outcome could decide whether the US remains at the forefront or risks falling behind. Under Harris's leadership, with policies that heavily support EV production and green tech investment, America could become a global leader in electric vehicle manufacturing, infrastructure, and innovation. Think of it as a ticket to the future, one where America competes directly with EV giants like China and Europe. But Trump's approach is starkly different. By focusing on the here and now, on gas-powered vehicles and traditional manufacturing, his policies could slow the country's transition to electric. That might mean more jobs in traditional sectors in the short term, but it could also mean the US isn't keeping up with the electric wave taking over Europe and Asia. What's at stake here? If America lags in EV innovation, the global auto industry could shift its focus elsewhere. Other countries may capture the demand for cutting-edge, climate-conscious technology, while the US finds itself clinging to an older model. This innovation gap could affect the country's ability to compete and attract global investments in the auto sector, posing risks to the long-term health of the industry. Environmental impact, a cleaner future, or a carbon crisis? Finally, we come to a question that could define the future of not just the auto industry, but the world we live in: environmental impact. Harris's policies, with their strict emission standards and rapid move to EVs, are designed to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. If implemented, these standards could significantly lower the auto industry's carbon footprint, aligning the US with global efforts to combat climate change. Under her vision, the transition to EVs could help pave the way for cleaner air, lower emissions, and a commitment to a sustainable future. But under Trump, the picture looks quite different. His approach to deregulation, reduced focus on EVs, and rollback of emission standards could mean an uptick in pollution from the transportation sector. Without federal pressure to cut emissions, gas-powered vehicles could continue to dominate, with each new car adding to the country's carbon output. The shock here, this could lead to a situation where the US is left behind as other nations work to reduce emissions, potentially creating a public health and environmental crisis over time. And the question is clear: will the US join the ranks of countries pushing for cleaner air and reduced emissions, or will it find itself grappling with the environmental and health consequences of staying stuck in the past? Auto industry adaptation, navigating a split future. The auto industry is facing a colossal challenge. With two vastly different policy directions on the horizon, automakers are left trying to prepare for both possibilities. Trump's policies could mean a return to traditional manufacturing, with lower regulatory burdens and an emphasis on gas-powered vehicles. But for automakers, this comes with the need to balance production between traditional models and the growing demand for electric vehicles in international markets, where the EV push is only getting stronger. If Harris takes office, however, the industry could face rapid and intense pressure to go electric. A strict timeline for emissions reduction could mean major investments in retooling factories, developing new models, and pushing EV production at a pace that may outstrip current capabilities. For automakers, it's a high-stakes balancing act, preparing for one of the most unpredictable shifts in automotive history. This isn't just a matter of preference, it's a question of survival in a future where the rules could change overnight. The bottom line, automakers will need agility like never before, adapting to a landscape where political changes can redefine the entire trajectory of the industry. From tariffs to emissions, each policy shift could create ripple effects across production, supply chains, and even the types of vehicles that will dominate American roads in the years to come. Investment in infrastructure and new tech. Now let's talk about infrastructure, the backbone of any automotive revolution. For the green future Harris envisions, a vast network of EV charging stations, battery production facilities, and even EV-friendly cities would be essential. Harris's agenda includes ambitious investment in these areas, potentially transforming the American landscape with charging stations becoming as common as gas stations. This could make EVs more accessible to everyone, from city dwellers to rural drivers. Trump's approach, however, would be very different. Without a significant push toward EV infrastructure, the US might find itself lagging in the global shift to electric, as other countries establish robust charging networks and EV support systems. Instead, Trump's policies could prioritize infrastructure that supports traditional energy sources, potentially including pipelines and gas facilities, rather than battery plants and solar-powered stations. What's at stake? Infrastructure investment will determine how quickly Americans can adapt to electric vehicles. Harris's policies might pave the way for a greener, more technologically advanced infrastructure, while Trump's could keep traditional resources front and center, possibly delaying the transition to newer technologies. Workforce transformation, preparing for a new era. Finally, let's turn to the people at the heart of the industry, the American workforce. The transition to electric vehicles isn't just about new cars, it's about new skills, new jobs, and for some, a need to relearn everything they know about building cars. Under Harris's leadership, there would likely be substantial investments in retraining programs to help auto workers adapt to the demands of EV production. Battery assembly, software development, and advanced manufacturing skills would become essential, creating a workforce geared toward green technology. But what happens if Trump's approach wins out? Traditional jobs in manufacturing, assembly, and even fossil fuel production could continue to flourish. Trump's policies would likely focus on preserving existing jobs, supporting traditional roles in factories and production lines, rather than retraining workers for new skills. For many, this could mean job security in the short term, without the need to transition to new roles. But it could also mean that the US workforce isn't as prepared for a future increasingly defined by green technology and innovation. The human impact here. For American auto workers, this election could mean the difference between continuing with traditional skills and embracing an entirely new era of automotive production. Will workers be ready for a green shift, or will they hold tight to the roles they've known for generations? The auto industry's long-term outlook shaping the next decade. As we've explored, the stakes couldn't be higher for the US auto industry. The next few years will define whether America doubles down on its gas-powered past or surges forward into an electric future. But what do the long-term implications look like? A Trump-led administration may mean stability for traditional jobs, but it could risk isolating the US from the rest of the world's EV race. Meanwhile, Harris's vision might push the US to the forefront of green innovation, but the accelerated shift could prove costly and disruptive for both the industry and its workers. If Trump's policies prevail, the next decade might see the US automotive landscape hold fast to its gas-powered roots. This would likely mean a stable or slower growth trajectory for electric vehicle adoption, with gas-powered models continuing to dominate US roads. And while Trump's push for deregulation may lower production costs, it could also leave the US lagging in the technological race as other nations prioritize cleaner, smarter automotive technology. But if Harris's policies are implemented, we could see an unprecedented leap in EV production, infrastructure, and green technology. For automakers, this would mean investing heavily in new plants, R&D, and retraining programs. In the short term, the transition might create turbulence, but in the long run, it could secure America's standing as a leader in green automotive technology and position the US as a competitive player in the global EV market. Economic ripple effects. How will consumers and workers be affected? Let's consider the economic implications for both consumers and the workforce. Under Trump's policies, traditional manufacturing jobs would likely see short-term security, especially as tariffs and incentives encourage US-based production. Workers in engine and assembly manufacturing might retain their roles with fewer risks of rapid transitions. However, the risk for these workers lies in the potential stagnation of skill development. As the world pivots to green technology, a heavy reliance on traditional roles could leave American workers underprepared for the future. For consumers, Trump's approach could result in mixed financial outcomes. While reduced regulations might translate to more affordable gas-powered vehicles, potential tariffs could drive up prices on imported parts, affecting car affordability. This means that while consumers may have more choices in terms of gas-powered models, they may also face higher sticker prices due to trade tensions and tariffs. On the other hand, Harris's policies may demand a significant shift for workers, with an urgent need for retraining programs to bring the workforce up to speed with green technologies. In the short term, this could be challenging, with layoffs in traditional roles and increased demand for specialized EV manufacturing positions. But if the transition is well supported, Harris's approach could give workers access to high-skill, high-demand roles in an evolving industry. Consumers under Harris's administration could see the cost of electric vehicles drop over time thanks to increased production incentives and improved infrastructure. Though EVs might initially be more expensive than traditional cars, long-term savings from lower fuel and maintenance costs could make them a smarter financial choice for many families. Environmental and global implications, America's place in the world. On a global scale, the path chosen in 2024 will affect not only America's environmental impact, but also its place in the international auto industry. If Trump's policies prevail, the US could become somewhat of an outlier among major nations prioritizing environmental regulations and EV adoption. This might create a niche for traditional American vehicles, but it could also isolate the US market from broader industry trends, making American cars less competitive on the international stage. Harris's path, however, is one of alignment with the global green movement. By pushing the US toward EV dominance, she's setting the stage for America to join the ranks of global leaders in sustainable automotive innovation. This could lead to strengthened partnerships with other nations and attract international investments in American green tech. However, the US would need to manage the costs and economic strains associated with such an aggressive shift, ensuring that both the workforce and industry have the support needed to adapt quickly. Environmentally, the impact of Harris's policies could be profound. A nationwide shift to EVs could dramatically lower transportation-related emissions, helping the US contribute to global climate goals. But Trump's approach could maintain or even increase emissions as gas-powered vehicles continue to dominate, leaving America's environmental footprint largely unchanged in a world moving towards sustainability. The auto industry's crossroads, preparing for an uncertain future. So where does this leave the American auto industry? At a crossroads with one path leading to a familiar landscape of traditional manufacturing and gas-powered engines, and the other to a green, electrified world full of unknowns. For automakers, workers, and consumers, the 2024 election isn't just about a policy choice. It's about choosing the future of the cars we drive, the jobs we rely on, and the air we breathe. As the dust settles after the election, automakers will need to make tough decisions, whether that means ramping up EV production under Harris's policies or focusing on traditional vehicles with Trump. And for consumers and workers alike, the next few years will demand adaptation and resilience as they navigate this shifting landscape. With both roads posing unique challenges and rewards, the auto industry will find itself on the edge of one of the biggest transformations in its history.